Sister, sister, oh so fair, why is there blood all over your hair?
Whatever happened to baby Jane? To seek the answer to that question, we will follow a man plotting a murder. Highly specialized work. But Robert Aldrich has considerable experience in such matters. He has a dozen successful pictures to his credit. His stars are Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The scene: an Italianate villa in a once fashionable section of Los Angeles. Its halls, once crowded with the bright, the beautiful, and the celebrated, now echo only to hectic whispers, the insistent call of a buzzer better left unanswered. A telephone that has become an object of fear. A supper tray that will not be touched. A window barred against the world. A hammer. A mute scrawl crying for help. From these elements, director Aldrich has fashioned a motion picture with a curious title: Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Bette Davis is Jane Hudson. Joan Crawford is Blanche Hudson. But we must warn you, if you're long-standing fans of Miss Davis and Miss Crawford, this motion picture is quite unlike anything they have ever done. It is a bold essay in the art of the macabre, a venture to the ultimate reaches of terror. A motion picture definitely not for the squeamish. And we beg you, as the tension builds to the screaming point, as shock after shock assaults your senses, try to remember that this is only a motion picture. Try and remember.
Get away from me!
No, we can't show you anymore. Only when you see Whatever Happened to Baby Jane will you know. And the answer is total suspense.
Welcome to Dorking Out. My name is Sonia Mansfield, and you can lose everything else, but you can't lose your talent. Joining me is my podcasting sister from another mister and the co-host of Dorking Out, Margot D. Hello, my friend.
But you're in the chair, Sonia. You're in the chair.
I am in my chair. My podcasting chair. We are dorking out about 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It's directed by Robert Aldrich. Screenplay Lucas Heller, based on the book Whatever Happened to Baby Jane by Harry Farrell. And of course, everybody already knows all this stuff. And it stars Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. My friend, I suspect you didn't see this in the theater.
My parents were dating in 1962, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I was not a gleam in their eye yet.
Correct. When did you first see this movie?
It was in the 80s, and I got into older movies. It was because of renting movies.
Yeah.
And I think it was like Halloween time, and like they were out of The Exorcist or something. And so I said, like, what are good classic old movies? And somebody mentioned that, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah. I saw it. I knew what it was. I'd seen clips on like multiple other things. I'd read about it for years. Didn't watch it until the FX series Feud was coming out.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I'll watch the movie first and then I'll watch Feud. And I watched the movie. So first time would have been 2017. I watched like the first, I think, 2 episodes of Feud. And I was like, this is really good. And then for some reason did not finish it. So now I'm going to finish it after rewatching this movie.
We covered that for my other show, Book versus Movie. And if you go to our Patreon page, those episodes are free. We did recaps.
Nice.
Of all the episodes. Nice. So if you're interested. But I did also see this in 95 in a theater in the Village in New York.
That seems like the right audience for this.
Oh, when she says, but you are in the chair, like the place went fucking bananas. Like it was Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was so great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is like a camp cult classic. Like,
yeah,
The people who love this movie, and I'm pretty sure it plays somewhere here in San Francisco every October. It is.
Oh, it has to.
It has to.
It's very gay friendly.
Absolutely. So Joan
Victor
Crawford,
Bruno.
Joan Crawford and Bette Davis are such icons that, of course, it plays here. It probably plays here somewhere every month. It's not even just October. It's all the time. So my experience with this movie is not as long as others because, again, I just saw it for the first time. Rewatching it this time, I was thinking how this would be a great double feature with Death Becomes Her.
Ooh.
Which we did an episode on, I think, this time last year.
Yeah, someone was asking in the Facebook group if we covered it.
Yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
we already did that one. So Death Becomes Her was kind of already on my mind. And then rewatching this time, I was like, that would be the most fun double feature.
And Meryl Streep is a DTF, y'all, or at least single.
What?
You haven't heard? She's separated from her husband. They've been separated for a few years.
I didn't know that.
It just, and this is true, like old school Hollywood shit. Like it wasn't released until Friday afternoon, which really means it's real. Like it's, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. This is when they drop things on like Friday afternoons, they're trying to hide it.
Right. Or during a holiday, 4-day weekend kind of thing. Yeah. And you and I saw it, not to go off too much, but we saw when you visited me, we went to my favorite hot dog place that's across the street from where they shot Dog Day Afternoon. And they have this awesome T-shirt, which I got for your son.
Yes.
And it has John Cazale on there.
Yes.
And it's because they based it on the movie. And somebody was wearing that shirt and out in the public. And Meryl Streep went up to them and said, that was my man.
So sweet.
I know. Like, I think she never got over him.
I did not. I missed the news that Margot or that Meryl Streep and her man split. They've been together
45 years. Yeah.
Dude, that's bananas to me. I'm like, that after 45 years, you're like, meh.
You know,
but
you can't keep a secret anymore.
True.
Yeah.
Also, maybe after 45 years, they were driving each other nuts.
That's, I believe that. My siblings drove me nuts when I was 45. I was like, I wouldn't want to live with them.
Yeah. It's funny so the fact that Meryl Streep has now come up again, because I wrote in my notes that like Meryl Streep is like one of the rare exceptions to the most older actresses don't get movies like this. Like
no. And they were in their 50s when they did this, which is death. I mean, nowadays 50 looks like 30.
Right.
But back then, especially, they were heavy smokers and it was just a different time.
Yes.
The makeup that they had to wear was super heavy and not great for your skin. They were two actors, Crawford and Bette Davis. By the way, both of them under 5'4". Nobody knows that.
They're little.
They're petite. Yeah. Joan Crawford was petite.
Yeah.
Y'all. And a dancer, like a hell of a dancer when she was young. But they were like in the 30s and 40s, they were really at their peak. And then they both completely dropped off. And so they were dying to do this movie that's shot in like 14 days. It's like just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I don't know. It feels like it was shot really quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
it has that
not
kind of
a bad thing.
No, not at all. It has that kind of vibe to it. It's, they're both so good in it, and not to skip to the end, but this movie did get some Oscar nominations, but only for Bette, and then the only actress. Well, we'll
get to that.
Yeah, one gets nominated, and wow, what a fuck you! But do you think this movie? It falls under psychological horror. Do you think it's scary?
Yes, I think it's unnerving because if you know a narcissistic person in your life or you're related to someone who's a narcissist, there's things you're going to recognize here.
Yeah.
Blanche in the chair, dependent on this lunatic.
Yes.
Who gradually doesn't support her successes in the past, has to bring her meals, has to help her out because she's in. Let's start with the story. Sorry.
Yeah. You're right. You're
Okay.
right. Let's do it.
And the book is great, by the way, y'all. If you love this story and if you've never read the book, read the book. It's really, really good. It goes back and forth between their perspectives, which is really interesting. Yeah. But we have Baby Jane and her sister Blanche, and Baby Jane is a child star.
Yes.
And she has these cheesy songs that she sings. And the guy that wrote the Brady Bunch theme and the theme to Gilligan's Island, Frank Duvall, he wrote the songs here. So they're very catchy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know my shit.
Yeah, you do.
So she's singing these songs like I've written a letter to daddy, and she's a total psycho. She screams at her fans, she's like,
I want ice cream.
Now.
I want it.
And Blanche just is like, I don't care. We get ice cream. We don't get ice cream. I'm all right. I don't need anything. They both grow up to be actresses. And one of them is the more serious actress and the other one's kind of waning.
Yes.
And then there's a car accident by the front gate of the house and Blanche winds up in a wheelchair.
Yes.
And if you freeze frame it, you know who did it. But so now they're in this big house, which I looked it up online. It was like, this dilapidated shack that they live in, which is like a $5 million home now.
LOL.
Yeah. But they're living in this house, and it's now present day, 1962, and they show old clips of them. I don't know how they got the rights to these things. It just was the world back then. Thank God they did, because it really adds to the authenticity.
Yeah,
like to see Bette Davis and Joan Crawford in the 30s at their height.
Yes,
in these black and white movies,
they
and then
here they are in the present.
Joan Crawford was beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, Bette Davis was cute, but Joan Crawford was hot.
Yeah, smoking hot.
Smoking hot. So there they are. They're living in a house together. They have a housekeeper that visits, that doesn't stay overnight, but visits during the day. And then they have these next door neighbors. And the old movies play on the TV station, and Blanche's movies were better movies. Joan Crawford.
Yeah, they make it clear that Jane's movies didn't even really play in the United States because they were so bad. It's sad for her. Like Blanche actually, as baby Jane was the huge one, and Blanche was like, no thanks. And then there was like the switch. And as Blanche became really famous, she had like a clause in her contract that you have to like put my sister to work. You have to make movies with my sister too if you want to work with me. And Jane like kind of throws out this thing about like my movie didn't even play in the United States. And Blanche was a huge star before the accident.
Right.
And now all of her movies are replaying on TV, and she's getting like a whole new audience of people.
And that used to be a thing. You and I know this from our child, like in the 70s,
Yes.
early, like in the 70s. In the 80s, there tended to be more cable channels and more programming. But it used to be, back then there were like 5 channels.
Yes.
And if they weren't playing a soap opera, they were playing a movie.
Yes.
And so they were playing movies from like 20 years before. So these people that are writing fan letters and they don't know where to send them. So they send them to the TV station. And then, Bette Davis is such, Jane is such an a-hole. She like hides the letters. So Blanche doesn't see them. She's so
awful.
She's such this awful narcissist. She's just someone who has to be the center of attention, lead character syndrome.
Yes.
And what's funny, not funny, but funny, as in not quite ironic, but that in real life, those two were very competitive for the parts. They each really envied the other person for the parts that they had. And they both had different levels of it. Bette Davis was like the Meryl Streep of her time. She was nominated almost every time she put out a movie.
Exactly.
Joan Crawford was like considered hot, but not technically a great actress until she did Mildred Pierce, and then people took her more seriously. So here they are in their 50s, and they're playing women, in a rough life in their 50s, which people are usually like, oh, actresses are so vain and they won't do this or won't do that, and that's BS.
There's no vanity in this movie.
No, right? Bette Davis is wearing, and if you can see these costumes at Halloween time, especially in gay neighborhoods, but
especially
in gay neighborhoods, you have like, especially Baby Jane, it's like the mask and like, and Betty Davis said she treated it like she never really washed her face.
Yes.
Like she just kept putting makeup on it. So there's this, not kabuki, but like just so much heavy makeup on her face. And her sister Blanche, who was the more beautiful one, has no makeup at all because she's an invalid, or not, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word, but she's paralyzed. She can't take care of herself.
She's stuck. She's in a wheelchair. For whatever reason, they've decided to put her on the second floor of a house that has no elevator. I mean, maybe Jane did this by design to keep her like contained, but it seems like a bad choice. And she is 100% dependent on Jane to bring her meals, like bring her mail, all of these things. They do have Elvira to like that housekeeper that comes, I guess, a couple times a week to like help. And she really cares about Blanche and she's looking out for her. And they, but Blanche puts up with a lot of shit for a long time before she does anything.
We get the notion, like when they started in 1917, then 1935, and then 1962.
Yes.
So in 1917, when she's a kid, as I said before, she's just like, all right, whatever she wants, just take care of her. I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to be a bother. Because no one supports her, by the way. Her father and her mother pretty much ignore her. Like it's all about Jane.
Yes.
Because Jane's the moneymaker. And so Jane just wants to keep that going in their lives. So she puts her on the second floor. She has somebody comes by a couple of times because that house is dusty and it needs some help. And they have these really nice neighbors next door that check in, but Jane's the gatekeeper and she won't let people come inside the place and talk to her. So she hides the letters. And then the woman next door, who, by the way, played Lila Quartermain on General Hospital.
What?
That's Lila from General Hospital. I was watching that the other night on YouTube. Old 80s.
Yes. Oh, yes. I used to watch General Hospital all the time.
Fucking A. And in the early 80s, that was my jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, all through the 80s, actually. So anyway, she's this beautiful lady with a gorgeous daughter who, by the way, is Betty Davis's daughter.
Oh.
In real life.
That's sweet. Had her daughter in the movie.
BD, who was like 6 feet tall and's like 16 and gets married like a year later, and she and her mother have a falling out. So that's a whole other thing.
Yes.
But anyway, so they have these nice neighbors that are like, how's Blanche? She okay? We never see her. Here's some flowers. Do you need anything? And Jane's like, yeah, whatever. Bump.
She's not really in a place for visitors. It's like she would love some visitors. She's upstairs. Like
she's lonely.
She's so lonely. I feel so sad for her.
Oh my God. So then it becomes, Jane does little things like Jane kills her pet bird.
Oh my God, that part was so sad. That's so sad.
And she's starving her sister and she's putting like a rat on the plate.
Yeah, we have rats in the basement. And then feeds her and then serves her a rat on a plate. So gross.
It's so gross. And then she impersonates her sister when she's ordering liquor from the liquor store.
Oh my God, that's how much she drinks that the liquor store is like, we can't deliver it to you. So then she's impersonating her sister, trying to get more booze delivered. She impersonates her sister when the doctor calls. She's like forging her name on checks. She is just she's just being a real monster.
And Blanche is trying to explain to her, like, we don't have as much money as you think we do.
Right.
And Jane doesn't get it. She just thinks money just is spouting from the water. Like, it just can come from anywhere, and that Blanche is just holding her back. And then Jane decides, I'm going to make a comeback. And that's going to solve all our problems. Because Blanche wants to sell the house. Like, she's basically saying we need to downsize.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane's like freaking the F out because she can't handle it. And so she's like, you know what? I'll go back and do what I did before. I'm 54. Who wouldn't want to see a 54-year-old woman,
so awkward.
Doing these cheesy songs from the late teens. So then she hires Victor Buono.
Yes.
Who's so fucking great in this movie.
He is.
He's this mama's boy that plays the piano, doesn't work very hard, and his mom is like getting him gigs, so he's hired by Jane to be her pianist and be her musical conductor,
Yes.
whatever.
And for some
director.
reason, he's pretending to be English, which
So, yeah, they're doing a thing.
they're doing a thing.
And apparently they became really great friends after this. And he plays King Tut in the Batman
Yes.
60s
Yes.
show. And he died young too. He was like 40 or something when he passes away.
Yeah, I saw that.
But they were really good friends. Like one time when they were filming this movie, he was gay and he couldn't be outwardly homosexual. It was against the law. And he was arrested at a gay bar, and Betty's the one who got him out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so they were very close.
It's not amazing he was arrested. It's amazing that she got him out. That's bullshit.
Well, she knew then, like, those are my fans.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be good to the gays because they're going to be good to me.
That's right.
And she, this is also another thing with this movie is, yes, it's horror because it's psychological horror. Can you imagine if you were paralyzed, you're wheelchair bound, you're on the second floor, and you're living with someone who basically wants to kill you?
Yes.
Because they're just disappointed in their lives.
These are the kind of movies that scare me the most.
Yes.
Are these kinds of movies where
Those
you are
stakes.
Yes, where you are vulnerable and you are dependent on people and you can't help yourself. So like this movie terrifies me. Misery terrifies me.
Yes.
The idea that somebody can just flip a switch and do you so much harm and being that vulnerable to someone is terrifying to me.
And I think like there's a lot of kids that grow up in that environment.
Yeah.
It's triggering. Like that kind of environment is really scary. So that's where the scares are. No, there are no jump scares really, or there's not stabby or anything.
Yeah, it's
spoiler.
It's not that kind of kind of horror movie, but it's genuinely horrifying.
If the person that's bringing you all your meals and your water is like serving you dead rodents, and you know that they're interrupting, they're cutting off the phone wires in the house, you can't call people.
She can't even throw a message out the window without Jane picking it up.
Right. She's stuck.
Yes.
And that's what's really scary.
And Jane is like spinning out of control. Like she's getting more and more out there. She is like lying to herself and trying to like gaslight Blanche. Like, I bought this house with my money from when I was baby Jane. And then it was my dad bought this house for me. And Blanche is like, that's not true. I bought this house for us. Like, and she is just, and she also thinks that like people still know who she is. Like the scene where she goes in the bank and she's like, you might remember, or no, she's placing the ad that's at the newspaper. And she's like, you might remember me. I'm baby Jane Hudson. And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, and the look on her face is just like, they're totally going to remember me. And they don't, because why would they? Like,
no, and they had such a small budget for this movie. Like, it was no frills that Bette Davis drove herself around. And so she had a cameraman in the car with her. And he said that she's driving around Beverly Hills, Bette Davis with this makeup and hair.
So
and
bananas.
People were freaking out on the street. Like, what is going on?
Yes, I'm sure they would. That people are driving up, pulling up next to her at a red light, and you see that. What the fuck?
Right. It's genius.
I would be scared.
I would be terrified.
They should have filmed people's reactions.
You get some in the backgrounds. You can see. Yeah. Anyway, Blanche tries to run away. She can't. Victor Buono figures out pretty quickly.
Yes.
That Jane's nuts. And Jane also fires the housekeeper. Oh my God.
So sad.
Oh my God, I forgot about this part. So, spoilers, the housekeeper comes back to rescue Blanche because she knows something's up.
Yes.
And Jane whacks her over the head. And kills her.
So upsetting, because Elvira is like Blanche's one connection to the outside world. She really cares about Blanche and wants to help her. And she's being so brave, right? Like, I know you're doing something. You let me in this room right now, or I'm calling the police. And then Jane just kills her with a hammer while Blanche watches, and her whole thing is like, it wasn't my fault. I don't know how Elvira made me do this. You know, it's
Jane's
like,
spinning, like you
Yes.
said. And in the original story, that's what happens. Like she just loses reality. So she sneaks Blanche out of the house. And what's hilarious if you watch it is Joan Crawford not only coughed a lot in order to ruin the take so Bette Davis would have to carry her several times. Because Joan Crawford weighed nothing. Joan Crawford put weights on herself. So when she pulled her out of the bed, like she pulled her back.
It's so shitty.
It's so shitty, but it's a level of petty vengeance
Yes.
I can appreciate.
There- We don't have this now.
No, everyone's too nice. Everyone, like, nobody does that. So she gets Jane out and she takes her to the, and this is also terrifying. It's like she's on the beach just laying there,
So-
dehydrated, hot, you know, and her sister's just dancing around, getting ice creams and
Yes.
just being nutty. And then they're putting a thing over the radio like, hey, there's this woman missing and her sister's the person that we think is the person of interest.
They kind of stand out.
Yeah, they kind of stand out. Like, and it's great. It's like a 1962 beach. It's like Gidget, you know, it's like an Elvis movie. And then these two middle-aged women that look like they're withering
Yes.
in the sun. And then it ends with just Bette Davis dancing around
Yes.
for the cops
It's
in Malibu.
the movie's a little over 2 hours long, but that ending feels very abrupt.
Yeah.
And before, like, what I assume by the time they get to Blanche, she's probably dead, but Blanche confesses to Jane that Jane is actually not guilty of hurting Blanche, that Blanche did it to herself, that she tried to run over Jane and snapped her own spine, basically, by hitting the iron gate. Now, I will tell you, the first time I saw this movie, I did not see that coming.
No.
I had no idea that was where this was headed. And it explained a lot. It explained why Blanche put up with so much of Jane's shit for so long, because she felt responsible for Jane's descent into madness, basically. Although Jane was probably well on her way to doing these things herself. But Blanche wasn't helping, that's for sure, by
No.
telling her the story that wasn't true, and Jane dealing with that guilt of what she did. It drove
know,
her.
and then-
It drove her even more insane.
And that line where she says, "You mean all this time we could have been friends?"
That makes
It's
me so sad.
sad. It's a gut punch.
It is.
Like, it really is. It's a really well crafted psychological horror, and the women are so good. I mean,
Yes.
everybody's so good
Yes.
in this because they treat it like it's serious.
Yeah, they're not playing it like for laughs or something. They're playing it straight, and that's why it's so good.
And that's what makes it work. And it's a huge success. They release it on Halloween in 1962. It makes
Smart.
a shitload of money. Yeah. And they start going on media tours with it.
As they should.
As they should. And Bette Davis goes on the Andy Williams show and sings Whatever Happened to Baby Jane by Chubby, more like Chubby Checker. I love the way she says Chubby Checker. Like a mid-Atlantic accent from mid-century America. Chubby Checker.
Well,
And
and
Joan Crawford would go to screenings and would like bring an axe with her.
oh
and
my god,
it was crazy.
The press for this movie must have been bananas, kind of like how everyone lost their shit when the Don't Worry Darling press
Exactly.
media campaign around that movie. We were all obsessed with it. Like, Margot and I have talked about this, and we did a whole thing on Don't Worry Darling, actually, because I'm telling you, I think Don't Worry Darling is on its way to being a Whatever Happened to Baby Jane situation.
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of movie. But the idea of these two older like old, and I'm saying older because they're in their 50s, but like, again, that's not that old, but that's how everyone thought of them because they were like so young when they started in Hollywood. But they're doing the talk show rounds. They hate each other. They've had this long running feud. I can't even imagine all the press around this movie at the time. It must have been bananas.
Supposedly, when they made the movie, except for the part where Joan Crawford was, doing her shenanigans, they mainly got along. Like, apparently, like, because it's such a quick shoot too. There was just no time to like hang out in your trailer and be annoying. Like, they had to really just shoot every minute they could. But when it started, it all of a sudden it was getting Oscar buzz because they're both really good. Like, you can't imagine anybody else doing those parts. And then it was, well, who's going to get the nomination? Because they're both the leads. Like, who's the lead and who isn't the lead?
They could have nominated them both, but they didn't.
But they didn't. So
but
Bette
they didn't. But they didn't, Blanche.
In the chair. So Bette Davis gets the nomination, not Joan Crawford. Crawford's pissed.
I would be
because
pissed.
And she says that there's another story I read where Joan Crawford and Bette Davis were talking after the movie comes out, and Joan says, it's actually really good. Have you seen it? And she says, no. And she goes, you should go to the theater and see it. Like, people love this movie. So Bette Davis goes to see the movie. Joan Crawford calls her back and says, what'd you think? She goes, you're right. I was so good in it. And like, she never mentioned how good Joan was. So
such a bitch move.
It's such a bitch move. Like, you always compliment the other person.
Just be like, we were so great. Look at this thing we made that people are enjoying. That's amazing. Instead, it's like, you're right. I'm amazing.
I was awesome. That is my picture. So they started doing their own promotions around it. And then it became the story about these two competing actresses. So Joan Crawford doesn't get nominated, but Joan Crawford is like, I'm gonna go to that event.
I'm getting up on that stage, goddammit.
I'm getting up on that. Right. So she approaches the other actors that are nominated in the category and says, if you can't go, I'm happy to go up there for you.
They're like, I bet you are.
I bet you are. And so it's Anne Bancroft who was on Broadway, and I think it's Anne Bancroft that won that year.
Yes, that's right.
And so Bette Davis thought she had it in the bag. And so she was backstage, like ready to walk on. And as soon as they announced Anne Bancroft, Joan Crawford goes, excuse me, and just like walks around her and goes on stage and takes this moment. That's
amazing.
It's so petty, but it's a beautiful petty. Like, it's really, that's hitting somebody where it hurts.
It is. Like, just that Bette Davis was like, I got this in the bag. Like, and I think if she won, she was going to be like the biggest winner ever. Like, she would have like the most Oscar wins, and it was going to be a whole thing. And then it was like, bah, bah.
Yeah, but you didn't play a blind lady, did you?
That's right.
So Joan Crawford steals that from her. Then there's a movie called Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte,
which I have never seen. Should I see?
It's good. It's good. It's not as fun as this, but it's good. But they're starring in this together, and Bette Davis made herself a producer on that picture. And then as soon as Joan shows up, she and Bette are not getting along, and then Joan is fired from the movie or leaves the movie, and then they bring in Olivia de Havilland.
Got it.
So then Joan is super pissed. And anyway, Joan also, like, she's on a soap opera, like her daughter Christina was on a soap opera, and Joan was like Christina was sick, so her mom went on in her place, which happened in soap operas sometimes. Like, the part of Agatha is going to be played by blah, blah, blah today. And it was always like, why'd you even bother? I don't believe this. But anyway, Bette Davis does a bunch of horror movies in the 70s and 80s. Like, she works till the end. Joan, unfortunately, passes away. And when she dies, they do those Oscar montages.
Yeah.
And she and her friends were really upset because Joan was pretty young when she died. and they showed her picture for like less than 2 seconds.
Oh.
And she said, and she was really upset about that. She's like, she deserved way better than that. Like they both hated each other, sure. But Bette Davis for years would be like, she was smart. She was hardworking. She showed up prepared. You know, she was beautiful. She was classy. She had a lot of praise for her. It's just not when they were together, or when she was alive, you know?
Yeah, she couldn't admit it to her while she was alive.
Right.
Didn't have that kind of relationship.
No, but Bette Davis would live to be 80-something. I mean, she was in the 80s.
Let me look it up
and
for us.
she would do talk shows, and this woman was like 80 pounds.
Yeah,
like
she's
tiny.
little.
She was little, and she would have these pillbox
She was
hats.
81 when she passed away.
And smoked like 2 or 3 packs a day. Like every time she was on a talk show, she was smoking a cigarette. She lived hard.
Mm-hmm. True dat.
True dat. Her daughter, BD, gets married like a year later when she's like 17 or something. And then
so young.
I think she's still married. Yeah. So Joan Crawford's daughter, Christina, wrote a book about Joan.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a few years after Joan died, and a lot of people thought Bette Davis would be like, yeah, give me that book. That's going to be great. Bette Davis was furious and said, how dare she do that? Like,
whoa.
Yeah. 2 years after that, BD writes a book about Bette
Oh, that's why.
Davis. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And of course, Christina's book turns into It's Mommy Dearest, which
has like 5'9" Faye Dunaway. So forever people like have this idea, like I did anyway. Like I always thought Joan Crawford was like this really big, like that was my introduction to Joan Crawford.
Because they are so, but her and that was my introduction to Joan Crawford too. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford are so powerful.
Yes.
And when they're on screen, they command attention. You assume they're bigger than they are. I think. I'm sure you hear it all the time. It's like you see a celebrity in person and you're like, oh, they were so much shorter than I thought. Like
shorter and thinner, and they have big heads. That's what I noticed.
Because they're stuck up. No, because
no,
they're
because
just
it films well.
Yeah, exactly.
But they were very petite. Well, my mother would say they're average because my mom was 5'4". We're just all really tall in my family. We say, you're so cute, tiny, Mom. You're petite. Some average. So they were average height. But yeah, that was my introduction to Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Was like, for Joan Crawford, it was Mommy Dearest, and Bette Davis was all these like 80s horror movies that she did.
I think my introduction to Bette Davis was, first of all, the song Bette Davis Eyes, but also I think maybe those like Escape to Witch Mountain movies.
They're so great. I love those Disney movies from the 70s.
Is it Kim Richards?
Kim Richards and Ike Eisman. Yes.
One of the housewives.
Yep, exactly. It's we just knew them when they were older. Then when I'm much older, I start watching these old movies and I'm like, God damn, Bette Davis is amazing.
She's amazing in everything. Even when they're watching the movie that they're insisting she's bad, I was like, she's not that bad. Come on. Like,
no, she's fine. She's great. And Joan Crawford, like she started in the 20s in pictures.
Yes.
But she was a dancer. And when you see Joan Crawford dancing, like look this shit up. She was on fire. Like she's amazing.
It's so funny because we don't think of Joan Crawford like that. But then you see it and you're like, oh shit. Like,
yeah, she was hot.
Yes.
She was like a young hot chick and really into dancing, and supposedly she made some blue movies, as they used to call them.
Ooh.
Yeah, and that people tried to, extort from her, but nowadays it's no big deal at all. Like, who cares?
Right.
But at the time, it was. So this movie it's really amazing. Their acting is great. Like I said, Victor Buono is. I love him. I loved him as King Tut. I don't know why. I'm like, why is that a scary villain? But I just thought he was goofy. But he and Bette Davis are great together. Like their scenes are really fun. I think Bette Davis is Jane when Joan Crawford's like, She's like, they saw your movie on TV. She goes, oh, really? Did they like it? And Bette
Yes.
goes, oh, really? Did they like it?
Enjoying yourself when she's like watching herself on TV. It's,
I love it. It's so good.
it's so good. And again, this wasn't a thing. These kinds of
Right.
movies didn't exist. And I, was reading a little bit about it, and they said that this movie kicked off a genre that they called psycho-biddy.
Yeah, or hag horror.
Yeah, hag horror, hagsploitation, all these things. And there were, I think Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte falls into that category as well.
Definitely.
I mean, this movie's a classic for a reason, and people, I know, like, we're watching it in October because it is a horror movie, but I feel people watch this one all year round.
You can watch this any time of year. It's not specific to Halloween.
Correct.
And it's just, I honestly, it's really amazing acting. And especially, like, you can't find two male actors that would do what they did, which is seriously
Truth.
put that vanity to the side completely and just be the parts that they're being.
Mm-mm.
Bette gets a lot of credit because she came up with that look, like the pancake makeup
Yes.
look and the hair. And I would have loved to have been like the backseat of that car. She's just driving around with the cameraman and people freaking out on the street. I would have loved that.
Do you know what it reminds me of right now? You can go on like Instagram, TikTok, whatever your preferred method is, and there is someone who has been they drive around with like a Michael Myers mask on, and they pull up next to cars, and then they like turn their head like really fast and like look at the people next to him, and the people next to them freak the fuck out. Like every time.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly, right? You're just chilling in your car at a red light, and like you look over and Mike Myers is
Okay,
in the
you
car.
got a new car recently. I want you to put on that Bette Davis look, the wig, everything, and just go around San Francisco and
People wouldn't even turn it. They wouldn't even look.
And SF, they wouldn't even look.
No.
You have to go out to Danville or San Ramon or something and
No.
see what happens.
I have a story about I was out walking with my niece Lorelai, and like some naked dude was like walking by us, and I didn't even notice. And she was like, "That man is naked," and I was like, "What?" Didn't notice. Or the whole parade of like naked bicyclists like ride by me, and I'm like, they should be wearing helmets. Nothing is too crazy here in San Francisco. Did you ever see the 91 remake?
I tried watching it. It's with the not the Richard sisters.
The
That's
Redgraves.
Kyle and Kim.
Yeah.
The Redgraves.
I would love to see the Kyle and Kim Richards remake.
There is so much of that. When you watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there is so much going on there that you wonder.
Yes.
Or if like Paris and Nikki Hilton, like this could have happened to them if they didn't marry better. Yeah, I mean, there was just like what are your options too when you're like an unmarried 50-something actress in 1962? Like, what parts are you even being offered?
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And then you think like, oh, they're going to get all the parts, and they did television after that. They didn't really get a lot of movies.
Yeah, it didn't change. Like, I mean, and then they started doing, like, Bette Davis started doing more horror movies, which is great because if you love horror movies, you get Bette Davis.
Yeah.
But it didn't change their career in the way that you think it would.
I think they made money because the movie made a lot of money, and I think they got some of that.
They had points on it, as they like to say.
Which is genius, considering how much it wound up making. Like, good for them, and they deserve it. But I'd love to see something like it now.
Yeah, me too. We have never done a movie from 62 before.
Oh, I'm excited.
So that means we get to do the top 10 movies of 1962.
Let's see if I've seen any.
I'm going to say you've seen at least 3. That's my guess.
Ooh.
Let's see. Number 10, In Search of the Castaways.
No idea.
Nope. Don't know what it is. Number 9 is a tie. There's a movie called The Interns.
Nope.
Nope. and Bon Voyage.
Nope.
Number 8, Gypsy.
I love Gypsy.
There you go. I knew you'd seen one. I have seen. Maybe I've seen 3 of these actually. So maybe you've seen 4 because I have never seen Gypsy.
It's good.
Number 7 is Hatari.
Nope.
It's let me see. I can tell you what it is. It looks like it's set in Africa and it's got John Wayne.
No, thank you.
Hard pass. Number 6, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Great movie.
Yeah, great movie. Number 5, Mutiny on the Bounty.
That's a good movie.
It is a really good movie. I've seen that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I've seen 4 of these movies. Number 4, That Touch of Mink.
Don't know it.
That's a Cary Grant, Doris Day movie. Number 3, The Music Man.
Not my favorite musical. I've seen it, but
I've also seen it. I love the spoof of it on The Simpsons. where they talk the town into buying a monorail.
that's one of the best episodes ever.
Monorail. I think
Conan O'Brien wrote that.
Conan O'Brien wrote that one. It's one of my favorites. Number 2, Lawrence of Arabia.
It needs to be longer. It's not quite long enough for me. That's my joke. I know. I'm an idiot. I
You
should
are not an
appreciate it
idiot.
more. But
I have never seen Lawrence of Arabia.
it's forever.
Yeah, I have a friend, my friend John, who might be listening. Hi, John. You know John. John lives in New York. Okay, John loves this movie and was like, we should see it when it plays on the big screen because it comes out every once in a while for like re-releases. And I was like, that would be super fun. So I've actually like held off on watching it because I want to see it on the big screen. But then John moved away. So I don't imagine he'll fly all the way to SF to watch Lawrence of Arabia with me. So I might just have to watch it myself.
You know what? My asshole move would be like to watch it on my phone, like on a plane, and just like roll my eyes and yawn, like this is stupid.
That was something I told someone that at work about Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I'm gonna watch it on my phone, like God intended.
Peter O'Toole is beautiful, by the way, in the movie. Yeah.
Also, I saw Oppenheimer in the theater. I didn't watch it on my phone, but if I did, that was my choice.
Yes.
And then the number 1 movie is something called The Longest Day.
Oh, it's a World War II movie.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Meh.
Do you want to hear the top 10 songs for when this came out?
I can't wait.
Halloween 1962. Some good ones here. Number 10, Elvis Presley, Return to Sender.
Oh, come on. I mean, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Number 9, Neil Sedaka, Next Door to an Angel. I don't know that one.
I don't know that one.
Number 8, Chubby Checka, Limbo Rock. That's a good song.
I just like your pronunciation. It's good.
Thank you. Number 7, Shawnee Mathis, Gina. I don't know that one.
I don't know that one either.
Number 6, The Four Seasons, Big Girls Don't Cry.
God, this one, yes. You still can't strangely get away from that song.
No. Number 5, Brenda Lee, All Alone Am I? I don't know that one.
It sounds depressing. No thanks.
This is one you can't get away from this time of year. Bobby, Boris Pickett, and the Crypt Keepers, Monster Mash.
Okay, I was going to make a joke that Monster Mash was on this list. I didn't know if it came out in 62 or not.
Yep.
Monster Mash. It's a graveyard smash.
Number 3, The Contours, Do You Love Me?
Oh, I love that song.
It's a good song. Number 2, Gene Pitney, Only Love Can Break a Heart.
Don't know it.
It's a Only Love Can Break a Heart. It's on Hairspray, I think.
Oh, okay.
And number 1 song, I fucking love this song. The Crystals, He's a Rebel.
I don't know this song.
He's a rebel and he'll never be any good. He's a What? You don't know the song?
I don't think so. I'll go listen to it after we're done recording. Maybe I've heard it and but that doesn't sound familiar
dope
to me.
All right. Well, He's a Rebel, The Crystals. You got to listen to that later.
Don't spoil it for me. I just want to know if he's actually really a rebel.
Just because he doesn't do what everyone else does, Sonia. I'm not going to spoil it.
Okay.
You got to listen to it.
All right, I will. What else are you dorking out about, my friend?
Great British Bake Off. They had Chocolate Week this week. Really
my
good.
gosh. I'm loving this season so much.
They got back to basics, y'all.
Yes. It's so good. First of all, every time it's Chocolate Week, it's always the hottest day of the year.
Right.
I don't know why that happens every time, but it happens every time. I'm just so happy that they're giving them like the proper amount of time to actually bake these things. Like, and they're all delightful.
Also, Fall of the House of Usher.
What'd you think?
I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I know everyone's like, it's a little obvious. I'm like, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. I like it.
Are you kidding me?
It's so entertaining.
It's so good. The acting's great.
Yes.
All the references are cool. I mean, fuck off.
Yeah, I
What
know.
did you expect? Did you not think it was going to have like Easter eggs? It's Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
Like, seriously?
Also, yeah, we get it. They're the Sackler family. Everyone's like, well, it's a little obvious that it's like about the Sacklers or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. It can be obvious about those things. It's super
They're
entertaining.
Yeah.
I love all of his things. I think that this one was really great. And I really liked, I mean, I liked everybody in it, but I want to shout out like Mark Hamill is so good. He's so good. I was like, could you all put Mark Hamill in your shit? Because he's really good. And he was really good in this. And I thought Bruce Greenwood was really, really great too.
Who replaced Frank Langella?
Yes. Yeah. And he's
Carlo Gugino, Kate Siegel.
They're all
It's got
so
some
good.
great people. Yeah.
So, everyone in it is so good. And I'm going to go back and finish. I'm going to start it from the beginning, House of Bly Manor, because I got a couple episodes in. I'll just be honest. I think I was watching it with my then husband, and maybe we didn't finish it for some reason. So I'm going to go back and watch it. I'm going to start all over and watch that one because people love that one, and I like everything else he's done. So
I'm a big fan. I'll watch his stuff. Like,
yes.
Yeah. Shudder on Amazon. I watched Shudder through, and they did this last year, but I'm watching it this year again. It's their like top 100 scary movie scenes. I love this time of year. I love scary movies,
Me
and
too.
It gives me great ideas for stuff. And Whatever Happened to Baby Jane's on there too.
Yes.
And also just our usual Real Housewives in New York City.
New York City. I guess there's going to be a reunion, right?
Yeah, there's a reunion. It starts next week. It's only going to be 2.
Yeah.
Which is good. When they make it 3 or 4, I can't stand it. It's too much. But 2 is good. But yeah, Pavitt, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jessel's husband Pavitt is a guy, an American Indian man, who collects points on flights for vacation. See if you can understand that wacky premise, because there's 2 bitches on this show that like don't listen and don't understand.
They're such bitches.
So he bought for $600 this round trip first class ticket to Vietnam. And he's like, but he's just going to go for like a day and a half and eat as many sandwiches as he can and then come home. And he's like, I collect the points and then we'll go to Disneyland or something with my family.
Yeah.
And they can't understand it. So Pavitt just posted on Instagram
his
trip. And I want to travel with this guy because he's got shit down. Like he knows how to do things. Like I'm telling you, international first class is something next level. I just did this for the first time. I treated myself and I got like business class to I flew to London and then London to Ireland. It's fucking dope. Like you sit in like it's almost like a little cube, like a cubicle, and you get your TV and your headphones, and the food was fucking delicious, and they're filling up your booze every 5 seconds, and you could sleep if you want or not, whatever. And like, I would imagine that as a
husband and a father with like 2 young children, that would be fucking relaxing. I'm like, I get
and he's
it.
into these sandwiches, which if you don't know Vietnamese culture, like it's half French and half Asian. And so it's this fusion food. And there's like this, I know you don't eat pork, but there's like this pork sandwich that he shows that I'm like dying.
I get the vegan version of the banh mi all the time with tofu, and it's delicious. It's delicious.
So anyway, yeah, that's coming up. And then Real Housewives Salt Lake City. Mary didn't know her son was married for a year, and they live in the same house.
Mary's such a weirdo, and I mean that as I guess a compliment. Like, she doesn't bother to find out, and then she's like, I don't know, one day I saw him and her, because apparently she lives there. The wife lives
their
there.
own wing of the house,
and
but
she
she never talks to them.
Yeah, and she's like, I saw them one day, and they were really dressed up, and they seemed like to be in a rush. And I was like, how do you not know? How do you not know? She's such a kook.
She's so weird. And then one of the women, Angie, is Greek, and that's pretty much her personality as far as we're getting. But she has Greek Easter, which I've been to a Greek Easter before. I love Greek food. That is like
I love Greek food too, and I'm like,
she had a spread going.
Mhm.
Like that's what you had to do. But she sent bunny rabbits to people's homes. And she had like a rabbit in the back seat of Heather's car, and she like had a complete freak out, which I would too, because that's really bizarre. But then she talks about narcissism. One of them, Monica, her mother comes to the party with her, and then she and her mother have a thing going on. I know what's going on in New York tonight.
I don't. What? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just like, there's a lot of.
Oh,
are
there sirens?
Yeah.
They're coming for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the fight between Monica and her mother, I was like, awkward. So awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a narcissism thing going on there.
For sure. And I mean, that show, it's just bananas.
It's fun.
It's so fun. I went to a Halloween party last night, and someone was like, what are you watching? And I was like, Housewives. I'm like, sorry, you're missing out, because Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is it. It's so good.
How was your Barbie costume? I didn't see any pictures.
I'll tell you about it off the air.
Okay.
Anything else on your list?
I was just going to say the usual, like Apple TV, the morning show.
Oh, yeah.
It's John Hamm and Jennifer Aniston are playing a hot couple. And I was like, oh, this is what I needed. I needed like a super hot couple to play a hot couple.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
I'm reading Misery. It's funny you mentioned Misery because we're doing that for another for Book versus Movie. And I was listening to the audiobook last night. Lindsay Cruz, who was in Slapshot.
Yeah.
She does the audiobook. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and I go to the bathroom. I come back and I hear, what are you doing with your cockadoodie book? Like screaming it.
Had you forgot to turn it off?
I forgot to turn it off. And I was also like, I love this story. It's so fucking crazy, but I love Misery. It's so wacky. I can't wait to see this movie again.
It's such a good movie.
Good amazing.
One. I started watching Lessons in Chemistry on Apple with Brie Larson and Louis Pullman.
Is it good?
I watched the first 2 episodes and I thought it was really good. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but the second episode ended in a way where I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I have not read the book. So
no, nor have I.
Other people were probably prepared for where it was going and the story it's telling. I was not. Because I watched the first 2 episodes and it's set in the 60s, and like Brie Larson's character is a lab tech who's actually like has a master's degree in chemistry and wants to be like working in chemistry. And Louis Pullman, which is Bill Pullman's son, people might remember him from Maverick. He was in Maverick. He was like Bob. Like everyone else had a great nickname and his was Bob. Like, and he's like he's also like a really smart like chemist, and he like sees that she's also really smart, and they start working together on stuff, and they fall in love, and it's very sweet. It's giving like Love on the Spectrum vibes to me. Like they're both like very smart and awkward, and they have this very sweet relationship. But it's also flashing forward a little bit, and you see now that she's like hosting a cooking show, like it's like a chemistry but cooking show, and we don't know like what happened in between yet, and they're filling in the rest. And it just went somewhere where I wasn't expecting, but I've only seen the first 2 episodes. So far, I really like it, and I am going to watch the 3rd episode.
Well, I'll watch it now.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was on my list.
Yeah, the cast is great. They're very sweet. You know, I was going to say they have good chemistry, but then I realized it's called Lessons in Chemistry, and I didn't mean.
What if they didn't have any chemistry?
Like, that would be awkward. No, it's good. I really like it so far. So I will stick with it. The other thing I wanted to mention was You Must Remember This podcast is wrapping up its erotic 90s.
So good.
I know. I'm like, this series could go on forever, to be honest. And she's covering, it's Katrina Longworth, and she's talking about Eyes Wide Shut. And she did her part 1 of Eyes Wide Shut, and she's going to do a part 2. I just watched Eyes Wide Shut again last December, I think. I was like, I've decided Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie. So I rewatched
well, it takes place at Christmas.
Yes, exactly. And
yeah,
I had seen it in the theater. Rewatching it, I was like really blown away by it the second time watching it. I know it has fans. Just I remember the first time I saw it, I think my expectations were too high. Watching it the second time last year, I was like, this is really, really good, and I want to see it again. And now she's talking about it, and I'm like, shit, now I have to watch it again. But I will wait until after her part 2 drops. But if you're not listening to her erotic 80s, she also did erotic 80s and 90s. You should listen to them. They're really, really good. Super
They're
interesting.
very good. Yeah, she also did what's like America, like movies during the war years.
Yes.
Like World War II, and she's had like the Polly Plath one was a really good series.
She did one of Charlie Manson that was really good.
Yeah. Oh, the Charlie Manson ones were really, really good. I mean, Karina's amazing,
Yes.
and I love her research. She has my dream career.
She's got a good thing going on. She did did a couple episodes on Baby Jane, right? Do you
Had to.
Or
Yes,
or at least on Joan Crawford, I believe.
No, I'm sure she's covered both of them, but she had also thing like famous like dead blondes, I think she called it.
Oh,
but it was
yeah.
a series of like blonde actresses, and she's like, her research is impeccable. I think she's amazing. Like spoiler.
Yeah.
That's my hot take. Karina Longworth, really. You must remember this. A good podcast if you like movies.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a coincidence. It probably isn't. But the Criterion Channel has been, along with her podcast where she's doing like erotic 80s and erotic 90s. And then the Criterion Channel started putting like erotic 80s and 90s movies on. So and a lot of them are ones she talks about. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's great. I think that's everything on my list.
Yeah, that's enough.
I'm so
Plenty.
glad. I'm glad we talked about this. This was a good rewatch.
I loved it.
It's very, very entertaining. And I know we're going to have some very happy listeners that we did this one, because people got very excited when we announced we were doing this one. Where can people find you on the internet, Margot?
You could find me at Brooklyn Margot for Twitter, for TikTok, and I think Blue Sky, and then Threads and Instagram, and my site, it's Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Okay.
Where can they find you?
You could find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky. If you like the sound of our voices, we also co-host a podcast called What a Creep, where we talk about creeps of the past and the present. We just did an episode on Justin Roiland from Rick and Morty. Creep.
Creep.
If you like Dorking Out and you want some stickers or something, you could email us at dorkingoutshow@gmail.com. If you want to give us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. And we'll read your name on the air. On the air. I say that every time. On the air. Yes. Call in. We'll take your calls. And you could find Dorking Out at Dorking Out Show, our website, on Twitter. We're going to be on Blue Sky soon because I got some invite codes. What a Creep will also be there because I'm going to put it on there. Threads, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. Thank you, my friend, for talking about whatever happened to Baby Jane. Did we get an answer? Whatever happened to Baby Jane?
Whatever happened to Baby Jane? Bow, 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 bow.